Hello Warhammer Explorers, hit subscribe and stay with our legion. Your support is what lets me keep making these crossovers. What if the Avengers face the Tyranid swarm? Steve Rogers stands at the edge of Avengers Tower, watching the wrong kind of stars flicker over New York. Not constellations, but holes torn in the sky by something outside their universe. Tony Stark shows him the scans and says the breach leads to a place where whole galaxies are stripped by a single swarm. And Steve cannot let that place fall if it might one day threaten his home. They gather the team, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, Spider-Man, because only they can move fast and hit hard enough to matter. Tony fires up a portal rig built from old Chitauri core tech and new quantum tunneling math. And Dr. Banner mutters that the energy signature feels wrong, like thoughts pressing against glass. Steve says, "We go anyway," steps into the light, and the universe tears open around the Avengers. The sky above the hive city of Helior on the planet Viridian splits like a metal plate under stress. Citizens look up from endless factory lines and cramped hab stacks. Black clouds burn white at the edges. Alarms howl from Vox speakers on every wall. The air tastes like hot copper and storm ozone. In the command bastion above the city, Lord General Cassia Verdan watches Auspex screens fill with wild data. Orbital pick feeds show a new wound in high orbit. A circular storm of blue-white light grinding against the black void. Her staff shout numbers and prayers at the same time. "Another warp storm?" someone gasps. "No," says a colder voice from the shadows. Inquisitor Varro, cloaked in simple black, with a small chihuahua white seal at his throat, steps closer to the display. His eyes are sharp and tired. The tides of the warp do not do that. On the screen, shapes fall from the spinning light. For a heartbeat, Cassia fears it is Tyranids again. She has seen biopods screaming through fire, full of claws and teeth. She knows that sight too well, but these shapes are different. They fall in control. One streak of red and gold flame. One small, dark shape trailing webs of shining thread. One green bulk that does not seem to care about drag. A blue glow around a man with a round shield. A beam of rainbow light that bends like a spear. "Drop pods?" asks the colonel. "Unknown xenos," Varro says. "Lock macro cannons. Target them if they move on the city." Lord General Verden hesitates. On the streets below, people scream and run as the lights grow. The first shape hits. Iron Man slams into the skyway between two hab towers, repulsors roaring as he fights to slow. Grav plates crack, glass bursts. The air fills with dust and terrified shouts. "Easy, easy," Tony grunts, forcing the suit to break. Red and gold armor glows white hot along the seams. He comes to a stop 10 meters above the road, chest heaving inside the helmet. Okay, not my smoothest landing. A second streak of light hits a different way. Thor, god of thunder, appears in a crack of lightning over a crowded market square. Mjolnir spins in his hand. Power rolls off him like a storm front. People drop to their knees and cry out in fear and awe. A green comet smashes into an empty manufactorum yard. The Hulk punches his way out of a crater of shattered ferrocrete, dust falling off him in sheets. He roars once, more from instinct than anger, then blinks at the strange metal towers and the distant, constant gunfire. Spider-Man swings out of the portal mid-fall, a web latching onto a passing elevated rail. He yelps, uses the momentum, and lands on the side of a hab block, mask already turning, eyes wide. This is not Queens," he breathes. Captain America lands last, shield forward, falling through thin air toward a manufactorum roof crowded with workers. The fall is too fast. There is no time to plan. He twists, slams the shield into the surface, and rides the impact like a sled. Metal screams, sparks fly. He carves a trench in the roof and stops at the edge, boots hanging over a 100-meter drop. Workers stare at him, eyes huge. Steve looks back at them. He knows his fancy suit means nothing here, so he does what he would do anywhere. He stands up, straightens his back and says, "You're okay. Stay low. Stay together." They do not understand his words, but they understand his tone. Then the ground shakes with a different roar. From the far side of Helior, beyond the outer wall, something answers the breach with its own arrival. Organic drop pods, mycetic spores of the Tyranid hive fleet, punch through the clouds. They fall not as random rain, but in waves, guided by a vast mind. The sky turns red with burning chitin. Lord General Verdon's eyes go wide. "Hive fleet Gorgoros," she whispers. "They're early." Inquisitor Varro does not look away from the sight. "Then the Emperor has delivered us a test," he says, "and perhaps tools." He signals the Vox officer. "Open a channel to all forces. Prepare for swarm contact, and try to hail those new arrivals before I have them shot." At the outer wall of Helior, the Astra Militarum, Imperial Guard, form a living line. Thousands of soldiers in flak armor and simple helmets stand behind sandbags and steel barricades. Laser guns, simple laser rifles, are braced on every ledge. Heavy bolters, large, roaring guns that spit explosive shells, point at the fields beyond. Beyond the wall, the land is already dying. Fields of grain shudder under a new wind. Spores fall like ash. The ground bubbles where Tyranid biopods strike, spilling out clawed creatures, gaunts with sickle limbs and void black eyes. They run as one, a many-legged tide. On a forward bastion, Captain Joran of the Viridian 12th peers through his magnoculars. His hands shake, but he holds them steady. He has seen smaller swarms. This is larger. Vox lines crackle around him with shouted prayers and orders. "Emperor, guide our aim," someone whispers. Then lightning hits the wall. Thor stands atop a bastion that did not hold him a moment ago. He landed like a thrown hammer, and the ceramite plates under his boots still glow. Soldiers stumble back, chanting and swearing. Thor looks at the swarm. He feels no fear, only the weight of choice. They came here to help, so he will help. He lifts Mjolnir. Dark clouds swirl out of nowhere, forming a low, rumbling ceiling over the fields. The air tastes of iron. "Stand firm," Thor says, voice deep and clear. "You fight not alone." He hurls the hammer. Lightning pours from the sky, a single spear of white that splits into 1,000 thin branches. It rips through the first rank of Tyranid gaunts, turning claws and carapace to steam and ash. The shockwave knocks later ranks sprawling. The soldiers gasp. Iron Man rockets up to hover beside Thor, armor still smoking from entry. His HUD fills with new data, different gravity, different gases, strange radiation. None of it matters right now. He opens every weapon pod. Micro-missiles streak down in tight clusters, guided by Jarvis's fast-learned models. Each warhead detonates with just enough power to shatter chitin, not ground. The front of the swarm shreds into fragments. "Target priority. Big ugly ones," Tony says. "Let the locals mop up the rest." "Your tongue is strange," Thor says, eyes never leaving the mass. "But your will is clear." Captain America reaches the wall by a different path. He rode a chimera transport from the city, crouched among grim men and women who stared at his shield. They offered him no words, only the sign of the Aquila, hands crossed over chest. Now he stands where the line looks ready to break. Gaunts throw themselves at the wall. Some have living guns grown into their arms, spitting beetle-like projectiles that explode on impact. The parapet shakes under repeated blasts. Guardsmen fall, screaming, dragged over the side. Steve moves. He does not move like a man in his 30s. He moves like the peak of human design. He runs along the wall, shields smashing incoming creatures aside, bodies soaking up hits that would kill a normal soldier. A Gaunt leaps at a young guardsman whose laser gun has jammed. Steve interposes himself, shield catching the claws. He twists, bashes the creature back over the wall, and offers the soldier a hand. "Clear your weapon," he says. "Breathe. Aim. We hold here." The soldier nods fast, lips whispering a prayer. He does not know the words Captain America spoke, but he understands the command in his tone and the calm in his eyes. Behind the line, Hulk jumps. He launches himself from a higher bastion with a thunderous crack and lands in the field beyond the wall, right in the teeth of the swarm. Tyranids bounce off him like thrown knives hitting rock. His fists rise and fall, crushing monsters into the dirt. Acid blood splashes his skin. It sizzles. Hulk roars, more angry now. "Puny bugs," he bellows, each word a blast of air. He grabs two Gaunts and smashes them together into paste. Spider-Man moves like a red and blue blur above the wall. He has already learned that webbing sticks just fine to Imperial habstone and plasteel. He swings between bastions, shooting webs that yank guardsmen back from the edge, trip charging Tyranids, and block gaps in the defenses. His spider sense hums tense and shaky in the strange psychic air. He lands near Captain America, clings to the stone, and shouts over the roar, "Cap, I think the bug army didn't like your speech." "Good," Steve says. "Means we're hurting them." Spider-Man nods, then flings himself back into motion. On the bastion, a Vox officer stares at the slaughter and whispers, "Emperor, protect us." Inquisitor Varro stands nearby, coat whipping in the storm wind. He watches the Avengers fight, eyes narrow but bright. "They bleed," he says softly, "but they bleed for us." Codex note: unknown xenos champions display battlefield impact equivalent to an Astartes strike force, but with unprecedented individual variance in power and method. The first wave of the swarm breaks against Helia's wall. Tyranid bodies pile up in choking heaps. Armor plates and claws and splintered teeth form hills taller than tanks. Guardsmen on the line fire down into the mess, finishing wounded creatures, eyes wide and faces streaked with sweat and grime. Thunder still rolls overhead. Thor calls the storm to heal, pulling back the worst of the lightning before it hits the city. Iron Man runs low on missiles and switches to repulsor beams, cutting down stragglers, but careful to avoid the wall itself. Hulk, covered in acid burns and gore, climbs back up to the parapet carrying a creature the size of a bus. Its spine back is broken. Its twin cannons, grown from flesh and bone, hang limp. He drops it at the feet of a shocked squad. "Big gun bug," Hulk grunts. "Smashed." A senior sergeant looks up, face pale. Thank you, Lord." Hulk snorts and stomps away. Captain America walks the line. He checks on wounded. He steadies shaking hands. He helps a medic pull a crushed soldier out from under a fallen chunk of wall. The man's legs are gone. The medic starts to panic. "We don't have enough stims," she whispers. "He won't live to reach the medici." Steve meets her eyes. "Do what you can," he says. "Stay with him. He doesn't die alone." He kneels by the soldier, takes his hand, and stays until the light fades from the man's eyes. The soldier's last sight is a strange shield and a calm face that refuses to look away. Steve stands, jaw tight. He knows this is only the start. In the command bastion, an emergency council gathers. A massive hololith table in the center of the chamber shows Helia and its surroundings in flickering green lines. Icons mark guard regiments, tank companies, artillery batteries. Now, new strange clusters of power readings appear on the map at the wall. Lord General Verdun sits at the head of the table, armor dusty, eyes red. Inquisitor Varro stands to her right. Senior officers, tech priests with metal limbs, and robed clerics crowd the edges. The Avengers are there too. Tony has wiped most of the Tyranid gore off his armor. The repulsors on his palms are dim, in low power mode. Hulk stands in the back, arms folded, making the room feel much smaller. Thor rests Mjolnir on the floor, his expression somber. Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, leans against a pillar near a cluster of comm screens. She has been moving through the city since arrival, mapping layout and response times, checking how fast the local forces can move. Spider-Man perches upside down near the ceiling, quiet for once, listening hard. Captain America stands at the edge of the table, arms crossed, shield on his back. He has washed the blood off it. It still feels heavy. Lord General Verdun clears her throat. "You claim to come from beyond the stars," she says. Her voice is rough but steady, from a place not linked to any known system or warp route. You fall from the sky like meteors and slay the great devourer as if it were nothing. Who are you? Steve nods once. "We're called the Avengers," he says. "On our world, when something threatens everyone, we come together. Your enemy, we've seen echoes of it. A swarm that eats and moves on. If it ever finds our home, we're done. So we came here to stop it before that happens." "Before it threatens your home," Inquisitor Varro says, voice calm. "Not ours." Steve meets his gaze. "Both, if we can." Varro's eyes are unreadable. "The swarms you faced, were they like this?" Tony brings up a projection from his suit. A helmet hollow shows the Tyranid bodies outside the wall, overlaid with data, mass, energy output, strange psychic readings. "Not exactly," Tony says, "but close enough. We've fought big alien armies, robot killers, gods, and things that eat universes. These..." He gestures at the frozen swarm. "These are worse than some, better than others. They learn, fast." A tech priest with a metal jaw clicks in disapproval. "Xenos cannot be compared to gods," he mutters. "They are animals." "Animals don't build galaxy-wide navies out of meat," Tony says. "Or jam my sensors with whatever that creepy background noise is. Banner says it's like the entire sky is thinking about eating you." "I said it was like a pressure in your head," Bruce corrects quietly from a corner. "Human again, and wrapped in a borrowed cloak. Like standing under deep water. You can't hear your own thoughts as clearly." Varro folds his hands. "That is the shadow in the warp," he says. "A psychic storm that travels with the Tyranid high fleets. It blinds our navigators. It crushes the minds of psychers, our own telepaths, driving them mad or worse. The great devourer is not simple. It is hunger that plans." Thor nods slowly. "A beast with a mind woven from many mouths," he says. "I have seen such things in other realms." Spider-Man shivers. "So it's like a planet-sized spider sense, but for eating?" Varro does not understand the words. He understands the tone. Lord General Verdun taps a control. The hololith zooms out. Red swarms appear in orbit. Incoming bioships, each one a living weapon the size of a city. Tendrils stretch toward Helia. "This is High Fleet Gorgoros," she says. "A splinter of a greater fleet. We thought we had months to prepare. Our astropaths warned us of its coming. Then your breach opened, and the shadow behind it thickened. They accelerated. They are here now. She looks at the Avengers. Our standard doctrine is simple. Bleed the swarm. Fall back in good order if possible. If not, exterminatus. Steve frowns. What does that mean? Varro answers. We burn the world, he says. From orbit. We scour all life. Our people, the Tyranids, everything. Stone is turned to ash. The great devourer cannot eat ash. Spider-Man goes pale under his mask. You'd kill everyone, he says. All these people, kids, families. If we fail to hold, Varro says. Yes. Natasha's expression does not change, but her eyes flick across the room, mapping responses. Fear, anger, acceptance. Steve's jaw tightens. Back home, he says, we have a rule. We don't trade lives if we can help it. Then your home has not seen the Imperium's wars, Varro says softly. A heavy silence settles over the table. Thor breaks it. What are your defenses? He asks. Your great engines of war, your champions. We must know how you fight if we are to stand with you. Lord General Verdun nods. She gestures again. Helios shrinks on the hollow as the whole system appears. Viridian's orbit, defense platforms, a few slow Imperial Navy ships, and approaching from the dark, the Tyranid fleet, a moving cloud of chitin and tentacles. We have macrocannon platforms in low orbit, she says, limited lance batteries, some escort frigates. It is not enough. Our Astartes contingent is small. Icons flash near the city. Astartes, Steve asks. Space Marines, Varro explains. Warriors enhanced beyond human limits. Genetically built super soldiers in holy armor. Angels of death, if you like. On cue, the doors at the far end of the chamber open with a heavy hiss. A squad of Space Marines enters. They are huge, over 8 feet tall, wrapped in thick blue power armor marked with white symbols. Each footstep is a dull thunder. The leader's helm is off, revealing a scarred, pale face with dark eyes. He bows stiffly to the Lord General, then studies the Avengers without fear. Captain Titus of the Ultramarines, Varro says, assigned to Viridian as part of the 13th Company. These are his battle brothers. Titus's gaze settles on Captain America, then on Thor, then on Hulk. There is a hint of respect there. You fight well, he says. His voice is deep and flat, for unaugmented men. Hulk is not unaugmented, Bruce mutters, almost to himself. Steve steps forward. We're here to keep this world alive, he says. We'll fight alongside whoever stands with us. Titus nods once. Then we make a stand at Helios, he says. We hold the swarm at the walls and the outer fields. We will not give ground to beasts. Varro looks at him. And if we cannot hold? Titus's jaw tightens. Then we will die on the walls, he says. And trust the Lord General to order exterminatus before the great devourer claims our genes. That word, genes, makes Tony's engineer brain twitch. You're afraid they'll clone you? He asks. Worse, Varro says. The Tyranids incorporate what they eat. If the great devourer consumes the gene seed of the Astartes, it will learn to build soldiers like them. Imagine such a weapon, bent to that hunger. Steve glances at Hulk, then at Thor. And if it eats us? He asks quietly. No one answers. The hololith flickers as new data comes in. Typhon-class bioships begin to spit fresh mycetic spores toward the upper atmosphere. The next wave is forming. Lord General Verdun straightens. We have no time for fear, she says. Only for plans. Avengers, Astartes, Guard, Inquisition. We stand or we burn. Let us plan how we stand. The second battle comes before Helios can catch its breath. This time, the Tyranids do not simply rush the wall. They attack from above. Bioships in orbit spit living bombs that grow wings in the upper atmosphere. turning into monstrous flyers. Harpies and hive crones, long-bodied creatures with spined tails and acid-filled maws. They scream as they dive. Iron Man meets them in the sky. "Okay, bird season," Tony mutters. He rockets up, repulsors back to full power thanks to a quick recharge in a guard reactor bay. "Jarvis, watch for energy spikes. I don't want any surprises." "Understood, sir," the AI replies gently in his ear. "I should note that local auger equipment is quaint. Be nice, they're saving the galaxy too." He blasts through a pack of smaller flyers, cutting off wings and punching holes through chests. Acid blood turns to mist behind him. One harpy tries to latch onto his back. He spins, grabs it by the throat, and uses its own momentum to hurl it into another. "2 for 1, he says. On the wall below, Space Marines turn their heavy bolters and missile launchers upward. Explosive shells burst in the air, ripping apart incoming creatures before they reach the city. Guardsmen fire laser guns in volleys, bright red beams lancing up like a forest of light. Spider-Man swings from gun tower to gun tower, shooting webs to drag down any flyer that slips through. "Got you," he grunts, as one harpy snaps at a line of guardsmen. His web catches its tail. He yanks hard, slamming it into the wall where a Marine's chainsword, basically a sword, with a roaring chain of teeth, chews through its neck. "Efficient," the Marine nods. "Thanks," Spider-Man pants. "Love your, chainsaw sword thing." "Chainsword," the Marine corrects. Thor does not bother with small targets. He calls down a focused bolt of lightning onto the largest flyer, a hive crone with swollen sacs along its sides. The sacs burst, releasing clouds of floating, seeking mines. Lightning burns through them, detonating most in one bright storm. On the ground beyond the wall, Hulk grapples something new. The Tyranids have sent a Carnifex, a living battering ram. It is a mountain of muscle and armored plates, with crushing claws bigger than a man. It crashes through the heap of corpses, heading straight for a section of wall cracked from earlier hits. Hulk meets it with a roar. They collide like two tanks. The wall shakes. Hulk grabs one claw, muscles bulging and twists. Bones crack. The Carnifex slams its horned head into his chest, driving him back. Acid drool splashes Hulk's skin again. This time, the burns go deeper. "Hulk hurts," he growls. He digs his feet into the ground and lifts. For a moment, the Carnifex hangs in the air, all that weight helpless. Hulk slams it into the ground, then again and again, until the armor cracks and the creature stops moving. He throws the body aside, chest heaving. Beyond, more shapes move. Larger Tyranid bioforms advance now. Tyranid warriors, taller and smarter, directing gaunts with shrieks and the silent pressure of the hive mind. Their living guns fire streams of beetles and worms that explode on impact. Captain America leads a mixed unit of guardsmen and ultramarines in a counterattack. "Stay in pairs," Steve shouts, moving between them, shield up. "Cover one another. Don't chase." An ultramarine lifts his bolter and fires in controlled bursts, blowing apart warriors at the joints. A guardsman next to him follows his rhythm, laser shots stitching into the gaps the Marine creates. Steve spots a warrior aiming at a medic team. He hurls his shield. It slams into the warrior's living gun, snapping it off, then ricochets to break its knee. The creature falls. An ultramarine charges in, chainsword roaring, and ends it. The shield arcs back towards Steve. A Tyranid lictor, a stealth hunter with skin that bends light, pounces from hiding, aiming for Steve's unprotected back. It almost reaches him. A black shape moves faster. Natasha fires 3 times as she rolls. Her borrowed hell pistol, a high-powered energy sidearm, spits bright lances that burn through the lictor's eye cluster. It shrieks and flails blindly. Steve catches his shield and turns. He does not thank her with words. There is no time. Their eyes meet, and he nods once. They move on. Up to now, the Avengers and the defenders of Helior have held the line twice. They have saved the city from being overrun and proven that the swarm can bleed. But they are tired. Their enemies are learning, and the Hive Fleet has only begun to press its true weight. The War Council after the second battle is louder. More people crowd the chamber. Medicae teams move in and out, tending to wounded officers who refuse to leave the table. Data scrolls pile up. Hololith icons flicker angrily. The smell of blood and burned chitin clings to everyone. Lord General Verdun slams a gauntleted fist onto the table. "We cannot fight like this forever," she says. "Every wave costs us men, shells, fuel. Our reserves are not endless. Their reserves..." She gestures toward the hollow, where fresh bioships are moving into position. Their reserves are the galaxy. "We need to hit the brain," Tony says. He is in a fresh suit now. The old one is being scraped clean of acid. Every system has a control node. Take that out, the rest stumbles. Varro watches him. "You think the Great Devourer keeps its mind in one place?" he asks. "We have struck the great beast before. We have killed their synapse creatures, their commanders. The swarm slows. It does not stop." "That just means you haven't hit hard enough," Tony says. "We met a guy like this once. Thought he could throw armies at us forever. We went for the throat." "Thanos," Steve says quietly. Varro raises an eyebrow at the name. "We need to talk about doctrine," Steve says. He looks at Verdun, then at the priesthood, then at Varro. "About what we're willing to do. You said your plan, if this fails, is to burn the whole world, to kill everyone here so the swarm has nothing to eat." "That is not what we wish," a robed priest says hotly. "It is what we must sometimes do. The God Emperor demands hard choices in his wars." Spider-Man shifts uncomfortably. "How many worlds?" he asks softly. "How many times have you done that?" The priest hesitates. "Enough," he says. Varro steps in before the argument can spiral. "Our wars are not like yours, boy," he says to Spider-Man. "You have faced single gods, single warlords. We face a galaxy of threats. The Tyranids are one, Chaos is another. Orcs, Necrons, countless others. We do not have the luxury of saving everyone." Steve's voice is quiet but firm. "Maybe you never tried," he says. Titus of the Ultramarines speaks for the first time in a while. "Our duty is to defend the Imperium," he says. "We are not blind to the cost, Captain. We know what we sacrifice. Every brother who falls is 10,000 lives saved. But we cannot, will not risk the whole for one world if that world is lost." "That's the difference," Steve says. "Back home, we fight to save the one world in front of us and trust that others will do the same for theirs. You're fighting to hold an empire so big you can't even see all the people you're saving." "It is not an empire," the priest protests. "It is his realm." "Semantic," Tony mutters. Natasha steps forward before things get hotter. "Right now, our moral argument doesn't change the math," she says. "We need a way to hurt the swarm so badly that Exterminatus is not necessary, or at least less likely." Bruce nods. He looks exhausted, but his mind is clear. "Their shadow in the warp makes it hard to think," he says. "But I felt something when I was big, when Hulk was out there. The swarm pressed on him, pushed at him, like it was trying to read him, to copy him." Varro's eyes sharpen. "And did it?" he asks. Bruce shakes his head slowly. "Not yet. But it tried. It got hurt instead. And then, I think it learned not to touch him the same way. It changed the pressure. Tony frowns, mind racing. So we have a system that keeps learning new ways to kill us, he says. Each time we hit it, it rewrites its own code. That means we need to change faster, or hit something it can't adapt around. Like a mind it can't risk touching, Bruce says softly, or a signal we can hijack. Varro steps closer to the hollow. Some among our Magos biologies, the tech priests who study Tyranids, have proposed striking the Norn Queen, he says, the brood mother at the heart of each high fleet. Kill her, the fleet dies. But we rarely know where she hides, in the deepest hive ships, in the darkest parts of the swarm. Lord General Verdun looks at the encroaching icons. Do we know where she is now? She asks. A tech priest raises a mechadendrite. We have a hypothesis, he says in a tinny, mechanical voice. This bioship here, largest mass, strongest psychic emissions, the swarm's movement center on it. It is likely the core synapse node, possibly a Norn Queen's chamber. Tony studies the readings. That ship is big, he says. Bigger than anything I've flown into. It's also sitting in the middle of a cloud of psychic death and meat fighters. Great. Steve looks at the map, then at the others. We came here to stop this swarm, he says. Not to die buying time for a firebomb. Sometimes time is all we can buy, Varro says. Steve shakes his head. Not good enough. There are millions of people in this city alone. They're not numbers. They're kids, workers, parents. We owe them more than a clean burn. Varro folds his hands again. And if the cost of trying to save them is the swarm breaking through and devouring not just Viridian, but the next world, and the next, he asks. If mercy now means more lives lost later, that is the equation we live with, Captain. We have the same equation, Steve says. We just refuse to solve it that way unless there is no other choice. And I don't believe we've run out of choices yet. The room falls quiet. Thor's voice is low but steady. This swarm threatens all realms, he says. Your emperor, my father, your all-father. Names matter less than lives. I say we strike its heart. We have faced titans before. Titus nods once. The Ultramarines will go, he says. We are not strangers to boarding actions. If we can reach that core bioship, we can cut our way to its heart. Varro looks at Lord General Verdun. She stares at the glowing map of doom, jaw clenched. Very well, she says. We form a spear. Avengers, Astartes, a kill team from the Inquisition. We strike the core ship. Meanwhile, the guard holds Helior as long as possible. And if you fall, asks the priest. Verdun's eyes are hard. Then I order exterminatus, she says. We cannot let the swarm have our genes, our people, our soil. Steve nods slowly. Then give us time, he says. Hold that order until we fail, not a moment sooner. Varro studies him. You speak as if failure is something you can choose not to do, he says. Steve meets his eyes. Most of the time, he says, it is. As they move to execute the plan, the Tyranids make their own move. The shadow in the warp thickens. Psychers, the Imperium's sanctioned telepaths, scream in their cells. Flames burn without fuel. Vox channels crackle with whispers that are not human tongues. Even Spider-Man's spider sense feels like it is under a heavy blanket. In the streets of Helia, people clutch their heads and drop to their knees, praying blindly. On the wall, Hulk snarls, feeling the pressure push at his mind. In the command bastion, a warning rune blazes on the hololith. New contact, a Vox officer shouts. Massive synapse creature incoming. Bioform pattern. Unknown. Central command names it. Swarm Lord. The chamber chills. Varro's face tightens. The Swarm Lord, he repeats. The hive mind's favorite blade. It has killed some of our greatest heroes. It learns each time. Each death makes it stronger. Titus grips the hilt of his sword. We have never faced it on this world, he says. Perhaps it does not yet know us. Then it will learn, Thor says. The Swarm Lord does not come alone. It drops in a massive spore pod near the outer fields, surrounded by a tide of tyrant guard, huge, shield-bearing bodyguards grown from the same vicious template. Around it, the swarm moves with new precision. Every gaunt, every warrior, every beast shifts pattern. They no longer rush in simple waves. They probe for weaknesses, test reactions, pulling back when fire grows too heavy. They treat the Avengers' moves not as random chaos, but as data to be harvested. Within minutes, Helios defenders feel the difference. Guardsmen report that their familiar tricks no longer work. Tyranid packs that once charged blindly now scatter under artillery and regroup out of range. Flyers split high and low, forcing Iron Man to choose. Even Hulk finds that enemies slip aside, refusing to let him grab more than one at a time. The Swarm Lord itself stalks toward the wall. It is taller than a dreadnought walker, with 4 long arms, each gripping a different organic blade. Bone sabers that crackle with psychic power. Its skull is crowned with cruel horns. Its eyes glow with a focused, hateful intelligence. Captain America feels its gaze even from a distance. It feels like someone turning a searchlight on his soul, not with emotion, with cold curiosity. Tony's sensors glitch. Okay, he says tightly over the team channel. New guide just spiked the reading graph. Jarvis. Analyzing, sir, the AI replies. Its presence seems to be coordinating lesser bioforms. Probability of it being a major synapse hub, 97%. Also, your armor is experiencing new interference in repulsor output. Something is drinking the energy pattern. Of course it is, Tony mutters. Power scaling interlude R. In the Strategium, Magos Biology's Helra explains, in grinding mechanical tones, that the Swarm Lord is not just a big monster, but a living algorithm. Each time it fights and survives, the hive mind preserves its battle experience, then births it again when needed. Inquisitor Varro notes that this means it can adapt not only to weapons, but to tactics, reading patterns and punishing them mid-battle. Tony realizes that his repulsor beams are being bent by micro-adjustments in the chitin and bioelectric fields of new Tyranid forms, making each blast less efficient over time. Bruce feels the shadow in the warp press harder around Hulk when the Swarm Lord is near, as if the hive mind is sampling his rage, learning how far it can push before he breaks or calms. The defenders understand, with a dull, heavy certainty, that the more they rely on the same strengths, the more this foe will turn those strengths into weaknesses. The alarm sounds before the explanation ends. The Swarm Lord is advancing on Sector Gamma, a Vox officer shouts. If it breaks that wall section, the city is exposed. Steve's decision is immediate. We can't let it get inside, he says. If that thing starts directing a swarm in tight streets, we're done. We hit it now, hard. Thor hefts Mjolnir. Then we meet the beast upon the field, he says. Titus nods. Ultramarines with me, he growls. For the Emperor. Hulk cracks his knuckles, feeling the psychic pressure like fingers on his brain. Hulk smash big bug, he says, voice low and dangerous. Natasha checks her weapons. We delay it, she says. Buy time for the boarding plan. Kill it if we can. Varro steps toward them. I go as well, he says. If this is the hive mind's blade, I wish to see how it cuts. Steve studies him for a moment, then nods. Stay behind us, he says. Varro actually smiles, just a little. I'm not a fool, Captain, he says. The field before Sector Gamma is already a graveyard. Twisted wrecks of Lehman Russ tanks jut from the mud. Ruined bunkers sag like broken teeth. Tyranid bodies rot in heaps, leaking strange fluids into the soil. The Swarm Lord walks through it all without care. Gaunts skitter ahead, clearing mines with their bodies. Tyrant Guard march in a tight wedge around their master, their heavy shields held high. Ranged bioforms in the rear spit, covering fire at any human position that dares to show its face. The hive mind has learned this section of wall is weak. It aims to split it open. The Avengers and the Ultramarines hit the flank of the swarm like a thrown spear. Thor falls from the sky in a column of lightning, carving a circle of molten glass around his landing point. Hulk lands nearby like a meteor, the shockwave flipping Tyranid warriors through the air. Iron Man strafes overhead, repulsors still not at full efficiency, but strong enough to shear limbs and crack shells. Blue-white beams cut paths through advancing gaunts. On the ground, Captain America leads a tight unit. Natasha, Spider-Man, and 3 Ultramarines. Varro trails at the edge, hell pistol drawn, rosary at his neck. Keep moving, Steve shouts. Don't get bogged down. We're heading for the big one. Understood, Titus says, his power sword humming with blue energy. Brothers, form on the captain. They move as one. Spider-Man swings between chunks of wreckage, webbing guns and eyes, tripping creatures into the path of bolter fire. Natasha takes precise shots at Synapse beasts, cutting down lesser nodes to slow local coordination. But the closer they get to the Swarm Lord, the more the air itself fights them. The shadow in the warp thickens into a buzzing pressure. Thor feels his lightning misfire, bolts jumping to random targets instead of flowing where he wills. Iron Man's HUD glitches, false targets flickering. Bruce, watching from a safer point as Hulk, feels his human mind slipping. Hulk feels a strange calm try to press into his anger, like a hand pushing the ocean. Hulk is Hulk, he growls, shaking his head. No bug brain. The Swarm Lord turns toward them. It raises one massive arm. The swarm obeys. Gaunts and warriors shift in a ripple, creating a clear lane. The Swarm Lord strides down it, bone sabers humming with psychic power, eyes fixed on the brightest minds in the field. The Avengers and the Ultramarines. The true duel is coming. Up to now, the Avengers have held Helios walls twice. They have killed waves of Tyranids and saved millions of lives. But each victory has taught the swarm how they fight. Now the hive mind sends its sharpest blade, the Swarm Lord, to learn them better, to break them, and to open the way for its fleet. On the move towards Sector Gamma, the air grows heavy. The team rides in an armored transport, a slab-sided vehicle that rattles over ruined streets. Outside, the world shakes with distant explosions. Inside, the only light comes from red lumen strips. A small holoprojector in the center shows a grainy image of the Swarm Lord. Magos Biologis Helra speaks through a boxy Vox screen. His voice is flat, half metal. Bioform designation, Swarm Lord, he says. Primary synapse apex. It is a command organism shaped over many campaigns. Genetic memory stores battle experience. It does not simply fight. It studies and adapts mid-blow. Titus watches the image with narrowed eyes. We have tales of this beast, he says. It has slain chapter masters and inquisitors. It is reborn by the hive mind when needed. Each death makes it more dangerous. Steve leans closer. What's its goal? He asks. Varro answers. To break morale, he says. to show our troops that even their angels and heroes bleed. Once faith falters, the line collapses. It will aim for visible symbols of hope. Us, Tony says. Varro nods. Yes, you. Bruce rubs his temples. And its presence thickens the shadow in the warp, he says. That means more psychic pressure, more minds breaking, less clear thinking from anyone who feels it. Thor rests Mjolnir on his knee. Then we cut the head, he says. Or at least, we blunt its edge. We have done as much before. Spider-Man looks at the hollow. The Swarm Lord's multiple arms and blade claws look like a nightmare that never ends. He swallows. Any weak spots? He asks. Helra pauses. It is not invincible, he says. Armor can be pierced, limbs can be severed, but it learns. Conventional forces are meat to it. It must be faced by champions, by those who can surprise it, or who can take its lessons and twist them back. Hulk grunts. Hulk surprises, he says. Varro studies him. You may be the first thing it cannot easily catalogue, he says. If that hurts it, it will seek to change you, or to copy you. Bruce looks away. Tony glances at Steve. We hit it hard. We pull it away from the wall. We keep it busy, he says. Meanwhile, the fleet gets ready for the boarding plan. We're running out of time to reach that big bioship. Steve nods. We don't let it inside the city, he says. Whatever it takes. The transport shudders to a halt. A hatch slams open, stabbing light into the compartment. A guardsman shouts over the roar of distant guns. Sector Gamma ahead. The beast is in the fields. Steve adjusts his helmet and pulls his shield tight on his arm. Avengers, he says, move. The battlefield before Sector Gamma is worse up close. The ground is a black stew of mud, acid burns, and broken armor. Air support has burned swaths in the swarm, leaving charred lanes that already fill with more chitin and flesh. The wall section behind them is cracked and pitted. Vox speakers there blare litanies and orders. Guardsmen cluster along firing steps, ready to shoot past the Avengers into anything that breaks through. The Swarm Lord stands in the middle of the killing field. It is taller than any tank, its body a blend of heavy carapace and rippling muscle. 4 arms end in different blades, each one humming with psychic power. Twin bone sabers that drip with invisible force, a barbed glaive, a hook-like impaler, a ring of tyrant guard, massive shield-bearing. Brutes surrounds it. It turns its head slowly as the Avengers arrive. Thor strides forward, lightning already crawling over his skin. Hulk bounds beside him, fists clenched, eyes burning green. Steve, Natasha, and 3 Ultramarines move at a quick, ground-eating run. Iron Man arcs high overhead, repulsors leaving trails of light. Spider-Man swings from broken husks of tanks, landing on a high chunk of rubble that gives him a clear view. Stay spread, Steve shouts. Don't give it a cluster to hit. Hulk, keep its attention. Thor, hit when I call it. Hulk growls and charges. He slams into the front line of Tyrant Guard like a cannonball. Shields buckle. 2 guards go flying, bones cracking. Hulk tears one shield in half and uses it to smash another creature's head into its chest. The Swarm Lord watches. For a brief moment, its mind reaches out like a cold hand. Bruce feels it, even buried under Hulk's rage. A probing, tasting pressure. The hive mind trying to map this new thing that breaks rules. Hulk! No think for you, Hulk roars, shaking his head so hard spines break against his skin. He leaps straight at the Swarm Lord. The monster moves with terrifying speed. One bone saber swings up, meeting Hulk's fist. For an instant, flesh and psychic blade meet, muscles and alien force straining. Then the saber slides along Hulk's arm and bites into his shoulder. Pain explodes through Hulk's body. It is not just physical. The blade cuts into something deeper, gamma-twisted cells that should not be cut. Green blood sprays, sizzling when it hits the ground. Hulk screams. The Swarm Lord twists, using Hulk's momentum against him. It hurls him aside, flinging him through a ruined bunker. Concrete and steel collapse, burying him. Bruce feels the world turn white inside his head. Natasha curses and drops to one knee behind a chunk of cover, firing at the Tyrant Guard. Her shots ping off thick shields. She switches to shooting at joints instead, burning through tendon and sinew. "Keep the big ones off it," she shouts. An ultramarine steps in front of her, his storm shield raised. A hail of living projectiles from nearby warriors splatters across it, exploding into acid. His armor hisses. "Move with purpose," Titus calls. "Do not get drawn into the beast dance." Steve sprints forward, using the chaos of Hulk's crash as cover. Bolter rounds from the Marines carve a path for him. He dives over a heap of dead gaunts, rolls, and comes up close enough to smell the Swarm Lord's stinking breath. He does not hesitate. He slams his shield up into one of the bone sabers as it comes down, sparks of psychic energy dancing across the vibranium alloy surface. The impact sends a shock through his arm, like a bell being rung. For a second, man and monster lock eyes. Steve sees nothing human in the Swarm Lord's gaze. Only calculation. Only hunger. Then the thing moves. Another blade flashes in from the side. Steve twists, but not fast. Enough. The edge carves a line across his chest, cutting through armor and flesh. Blood blooms under his suit. He gasps, but does not fall. He steps in closer instead, inside the arc of the sabers, and rams his shield edge into a seam in the Swarm Lord's armor. The blow makes the monster stagger just a little. Thor sees the moment. "Now!" Steve yells, voice raw. Thor calls the storm. Lightning slams down in a tight column around the Swarm Lord, turning air to glass. The shockwave knocks lesser Tyranids flat. For a heartbeat, the world is white. But the Swarm Lord is not a lesser creature. It crosses two bone sabers over its chest, psychic energy forming a crude shield. The lightning splashes around it, burning and cracking armor, but not killing. Tony dives in, repulsors flaring. He aims for the gaps Thor has opened, firing focused beams into smoking wounds. The armor holds longer than it should. Jarvis flashes warnings. Repulsor yield down 20% in proximity to target, the AI says. Something in its field is reshaping your output. "Yeah, I noticed," Tony grunts. A swipe of the Swarm Lord's glaive clips his leg. The impact spins him like a toy. He hits the ground hard, armor screaming as systems fail and reboot. Spider-Man sees Tony fall. He fires a web at one of the Swarm Lord's eyes, trying to blind it. The web sticks, stretching across a glowing eye cluster. For the first time, the Swarm Lord snarls in annoyance. It rips the web away with a spare blade and whips that arm towards Spider-Man. The bone saber cuts through the chunk of rubble he was perched on. He jumps at the last second, landing badly and rolling, breath punched out of him. A Tyrant Guard charges him. An Ultramarine intercepts, shield first, smashing the creature aside. His chainsword chews into its neck. Acid sprays his armor, burning through blue ceramite. "On your feet, whelp," he growls at Spider-Man. Spider-Man coughs and gets up. Yes, sir," he stammers. The duel tightens. The Avengers and the Ultramarines press in. But the Swarm Lord is not just big and strong. It reads their patterns. It learns. Each time Steve swings his shield, it predicts the arc a little better. Each time Thor calls lightning, It shifts its grounded limbs to channel the charge away. Hulk claws his way out of the rubble, shoulder still bleeding green. The wound does not close as fast as it should. It pulses with sickly light, gamma energy disrupted. He roars and charges again. This time, the Swarm Lord does not meet him head on. It steps aside with alien grace. Bone sabers cut at Hulk's legs and side, carving deep gashes. Hulk stumbles, then drops to one knee. Inside, Bruce feels something rip. He feels the blade cut not just muscle, but the unstable core that makes Hulk what he is. For a moment, the rage flickers. The shadow in the warp pushes. A whisper, not words, but sensation, presses into the gap. It suggests giving in, sinking, letting the green giant lie down and be eaten to end the pain. Bruce grits his teeth. "No," he says, voice small inside a giant skull. "We don't break that way." Hulk snarls, pushing back. He slams both hands into the ground, using it as leverage, and lunges at the Swarm Lord's legs. He grabs one and squeezes until he feels bone crack. The Swarm Lord finally screams. It brings both upper blades down, stabbing Hulk's back. The psychic charge rides in with the steel. Hulk convulses. Gamma energy flares white-green, mixing with the Tyranid's void mind. For an instant, the hive mind sees too much. It touches a kind of rage it cannot fully model. The feedback snaps. A blast of invisible force throws both combatants apart. Hulk crashes into the wall, leaving a crater. The Swarm Lord skids through its own swarm, leaving a trail of twitching gaunts crushed under its weight. Everyone on the field feels the psychic shock. Guardsmen clutch their heads and drop to their knees, noses bleeding. Lesser Tyranids stagger. Some simply fall, their link to the mind stunned. Steve sees the opening. He charges, pain in his chest screaming, and hits the Swarm Lord before it can fully rise. He rams his shield edge into the cracked leg, Hulk weakened. Vibranium bites deep. Thor hurls Mjolnir again. Lightning, guided by the hammer's will, follows the line of Steve's blow. It dives into the cracked armor and rips along the Swarm Lord's limb, bursting it open from inside. The leg gives way. The Swarm Lord collapses to one knee, supported by its other limbs. For a heartbeat, it looks small. Steve breathes hard. Blood runs down his side. His vision blurs. He knows this is the moment when heroes win in stories. But this is not that kind of war. The Swarm Lord moves with terrifying speed, even as it falls. Two blades strike out like snakes. One hooks Steve's shield, yanking it aside. The other spears him clean through the abdomen. Time breaks. He feels the blade enter, cold at first, then burning hot as psychic venom rides the wound. It is not just metal. It is the hive mind itself, reaching into him. Images slam into his mind. He sees Brooklyn under a purple sky, Tyranid bioships blotting out the sun. He sees Avengers Tower wrapped in fleshy tendrils, Iron Man suits melted into new bioforms. He sees school buses overturned, kids running and being swept up by chitin claws. Then the images twist. He sees another path. Earth safe, its skies clear. Tyranids never reach it, because the hive mind has learned all it needs from him and his team here. Because it has eaten them, taken their strengths, and turned away, full enough for now. The pressure offers nothing in words, only the feeling. Trade yourself, and this one broken world, and your home lives. Steve hangs on the blade. He hears shouts far away. Thor's roar. Spider-Man screaming his name. Natasha's curse. Inside his own head, there is a quieter sound. His own doubt. Is one world worth the risk to many? If he fights to the end, here and fails, the swarm may learn enough anyway and then move on. If he surrenders, Maybe he can direct it, steer it away. The hive mind pushes that feeling, like a thumb on a scale. All you have to do is let go, it says without words. Stop resisting, stop fighting, be eaten and save them. Steve closes his eyes. He remembers war in Europe, not in space. He remembers firebombed cities, torn up fields, mass graves. He remembers choosing to crash a plane into ice because he would not let a weapon fall into the wrong hands. He remembers one simple thought that carried him through those days. We don't trade lives. He grips the blade that impales him with both hands. No, he whispers. It comes out as blood. He twists. He uses his whole body, his whole pain, to turn the blade inside him. It cuts worse, but it throws the Swarm Lord off balance for a split second. That is all Thor needs. The God of Thunder does not aim carefully this time. He calls the biggest storm he can pull in this cursed sky. Dark clouds tear apart. A shaft of pure white light descends, not spread as before, but focused on the Swarm Lord's torso. It is not just lightning now. There is something else in it. For a heartbeat, the storm's core flashes gold. On the wall, priests and guardsmen see the lightning form the shape of a two-headed eagle. In that brief glow, an ancient psychic beacon, the Emperor's own distant will, lends weight to the strike. The blast hits. Bone sabers shatter. Chitin explodes. The Swarm Lord is lifted off the ground, its body cracking and burning. It drops Steve as if he were nothing. The thing crashes into the mud, smoking and twitching. Its inner fluids boil. Its psychic presence shrieks through every skull on the field. Then slowly, it moves. Burned limbs scrape at the ground. The hive mind in it calculates. This body is damaged beyond repair in this fight, but its core gene template is not lost. Retreat and rebirth are better than final death. It signals. The swarm thickens around it, forming a living shield. Hordes of lesser beasts throw themselves into the way of any follow-up strike. A mist of spores pours out, masking the field. By the time the air clears, the Swarm Lord is gone, pulled back, carried away, already being rewoven in distant flesh. The field falls silent except for the moans of the wounded and the crackle of fires. Steve lies where he fell, bleeding into the mud. Thor staggers to him, lightning fading from his skin. He drops to his knees, hands shaking as he presses them to the wound. "Stay with us, Captain," he says, voice rough. Natasha slides in on her knees from the other side, pulling med packs from her belt. "We need a medic now," she snaps over the Vox. "Priority 1. Captain Rogers is down." Spider-Man kneels nearby, hands hovering uselessly. He has never seen Steve hurt this badly, not even against Thanos. Guardsmen, still dazed, look on. Some start to chant prayers for a hero's soul. Others press forward to help. Varro stands a short distance away, watching. In his mind, he has a cold calculation too. This xenos champion is valuable. Losing him is a loss. But what truly grips him is the flicker of gold he saw in the lightning. He closes his eyes and whispers a prayer he has not used in years. The Medici team arrives, dragging a hovering stretcher. They work fast, sealing the worst of the wound, pumping in synthetic blood, spraying coagulants that steam on contact with the psychic-tainted edges. Steve's heartbeat stutters, then steadies. "One chance," the lead Medici mutters. "We can keep him alive long enough to reach a proper chirurgeon. Maybe." Thor grips Steve's hand gently. "You fought with the heart of a king," he murmurs. Steve's eyes flutter open for a moment. "We don't trade," he whispers. Then he slips under again. Codex note: Tyranid synapse apex organisms like the Swarm Lord can inflict wounds that cut flesh, mind and fate together, leaving scars that normal medicine cannot fully read or heal. Helio holds, barely. The Swarm Lord's retreat breaks the immediate push. The swarm pauses, its movements less crisp, its probing attack smaller. It has lost a sharp tool and needs time to regrow it. The Imperium uses that time. Guard regiments rotate off the wall in ragged shifts. Artillery batteries are resupplied. Chaplains and priests walk the lines, offering blessings and hard truths. The Avengers are pulled back to the inner city. Steve is rushed to a Medici facility deep in the command bastion. Hulk lies unconscious in a reinforced bay nearby, his body flickering between green and normal skin as gamma energy fights the psychic damage. Tony's armor is torn apart by tech priests and servitors who both fix it and catalog it. Natasha, Spider-Man and Thor stand in a chapel. It is a small place, hidden in the bastion's heart. A simple iron altar at the front holds a beaten metal aquila. Candles burn, filling the air with smoke. Stained glass shows saints and warriors. Thor looks at the images with a strange mix of respect and sadness. "Your emperor is given the honors of a god," he says. "He might as well be one," Spider-Man whispers. His voice is tight. "If he's the only thing holding this whole mess together." Natasha keeps her eyes on the candles. "I don't know what he is," she says. "I just know Steve almost died for his world." And in that moment, something answered. Thor slowly nods. "The lightning carried a weight not my own," he says. "A will older than your Imperium's banners. It turned my strike sharper. If that is your emperor, then he is not entirely dead." Varro enters quietly. He does not kneel. He stands with hands behind his back, looking at the altar. "I received a message," he says. "Astropathic, from far beyond this sector." Natasha turns. "From who?" she asks. Varro's lips thin. "From Terra," he says. "From the High, lords of the Imperium and the Adeptus Custodes. They have heard of you. They have felt you." Spider-Man swallows. "Felt?" he asks. Varro nods. "When the Swarm Lord's mind touched Captain Rogers and the Hulk, the shadow in the warp twisted," he says. For a moment, the roar of the Tyranids was pierced by another note. A different kind of will. Your entry into our reality left an echo, and when the Emperor's light answered, that echo grew loud enough that even Terra's psychers noticed. Natasha frowns. "What do they want?" she asks. "To see you," Varro says simply. "To judge you, to decide if you are a gift to the Imperium or a threat that must be removed now before it unbalances everything." Spider-Man takes a step back. "Removed," he repeats. "As in?" "Destroyed," Varro says, not unkindly. "Put down, wiped away, for the good of the whole." Thor's eyes darken. "And Helior?" he asks. "It still fights. You would pull us away from its walls." Varro sighs. "Helior has been granted a stay," he says. "The Exterminatus order is delayed. Your actions bought this world time. The High Lords will not burn it yet, but they will not let weapons like you roam without sanction. You must leave for Terra. The fleet will mount its boarding action without you, for now. The Guard and Astartes will hold as best they can." Spider-Man looks at the altar. "It feels like running away," he says quietly. Natasha answers before Varro can. "It's not," she says. "It's going up the chain of command. In their system, this is the only way we keep helping without getting everyone killed by friendly fire." Varro nods. "The Emperor is the only power who can truly weigh you against the dangers you bring," he says. "Your portal, your energies, your very presence in the warp. You are not like simple xenos. You bend rules. Thor rests a hand on Spider-Man's shoulder. Sometimes, he says, you must leave one field to save many. We do not abandon Helior. We seek a way to save more worlds like it. Spider-Man takes a breath and nods, even if it hurts. What about Steve? Hulk? He asks. They come too, Varro says, if they live. Captain America dreams. The Medici theatre around him is full of machines he does not understand. Cables feed strange fluids into his veins. A stasis field hums, slowing his body so surgeons can work carefully around the psychic-tainted wound. But in his mind, he is somewhere else. He walks a battlefield of ash under a starless sky. Dead cities stretch in all directions, half-eaten shells. Tyranid bones and human bones lie tangled together. Banners of the Imperium and flags of Earth burn in the same black fire. He knows it is not real, but it feels like a possible future. In the distance, he sees 3 paths marked by faint light. On one, he sees Earth, shining bright, floating in a void where every other star is dark. On another, he sees the countless worlds, each lit but dim, like candles in a storm. On the third, he sees one huge blaze, the Imperium, wrapped in chains and barbed wire, standing against a swarm of shadows. He tries to walk toward them, to see more. The shadow in the warp rises like a wave. It is angry that he refused. It pushes fear into him. It shows him again the knife edge of his choice on the field. It tells him, not in words, but in sick pressure, that mercy is weakness, that his refusal to trade his life for a mathematical gain was foolish. Then, suddenly, the pressure eases. A different light enters the dream. A golden glow, warm and terrible, fills the dead sky from a single point above. It pushes the shadow back in a clear circle around Steve. The ash under his feet stops shifting. The 3 paths glow a little brighter. He cannot see who stands in the light. The shape is too large, too still, bound to a throne he cannot yet make out. But he feels a gaze on him, colder and more focused than the hive mind, but not hungry. We will speak, a voice says in his mind. It is not sound. It is meaning pressed gently but firmly into his thoughts. Not yet, but soon. The light fades. The shadow snarls and retreats. The dream breaks. Steve wakes, gasping, in a Medici bay. Thor is sitting nearby, nodding off with Mjolnir resting by his boot. Natasha leans against the wall, eyes closed, but her hand is near her pistol. A servo skull, a floating metal skull with tiny thrusters, drifts above, monitoring vital signs. Steve's chest hurts like fire, but he can tell the blade is gone. He looks up as Varro steps into view. You were dead, Varro says calmly. By every chart we have, by every prayer. The blade stopped your heart, but something pushed you back. Steve licks dry lips. The Emperor, he asks. Varro's expression doesn't change much, but his eyes soften. I cannot say, he replies, but Terra still wants to see you. Our ship leaves soon. You, Banner, Odinson, Stark, Romanoff, and the boy. You will travel under my seal. Steve looks toward the doorway, where Hulk lies in a reinforced bay. His body stabilized, his breathing deep and slow. Bruce's mind is half waking, half dreaming. Green skin flickers to normal and back with each breath. What about Helior? Steve asks. The war continues, Varro says. Titus and the guard will hold. The boarding action on the hive ship will launch without you, but our Astartes are not weak. Your strike on the Swarm Lord gave them a sharper opening. Steve closes his eyes for a moment. He hates leaving a fight half finished, but he remembers the dream, the paths, the light. If your Emperor wants to talk, he says, we'd better listen. Varro nods. And you'd better be ready to hear what he says, he replies, Up to now, the Avengers have fought on one world's soil and glimpsed the worst hunger in the galaxy. They have felt the touch of a god emperor and the cut of a hive mind. Now they must leave the battlefield they know and climb the ladder of power to face judgment on the throne world of mankind. The ship that carries them from Viridian is a sword in the void. The inquisitorial cruiser Sanctus Judex is long and blade-shaped, with a cathedral built along its spine and weapon batteries studding its flanks. Great statues of saints and skulls line its hull. A massive Hagen sigil marks it as the tool of the Inquisition. It rises from Helia's spaceport on thunderous plumes of plasma fire. In the viewing gallery, Steve watches the planet shrink through thick glass. Scarred continents and glowing war fronts blur as they ascend. "Feels wrong," Spider-Man says softly beside him. "Leaving while they're still down there." Steve nods. "I know," he says, "but we're not running. We're going to try to find a way to stop this from happening to other worlds, to theirs, to ours." Thor stands with them, one hand resting on the glass, feeling the hum of engines through his palm. "This ship sails not like yours," he says to Tony. "It reeks of old oaths." Tony stands a little back, arms folded. "Yeah," he says. "Their warp drive makes my portal look like a flashlight in a bedsheet, and it all runs on prayers and tortured telepaths. This universe is a nightmare." Varro enters the gallery. "The Geller field will activate shortly," he says. "When it does, do not look too long into the warp outside. Do not listen to any voices that are not on the Vox, and do not, under any circumstance, leave the blessed areas of the ship without escort." Spider-Man blinks. "That's comforting," he says. Natasha gives Varro a dry look. "We've done long trips in dangerous spaces before," she says. "We'll follow your rules." Varro nods. "The warp here is not like whatever holds your portals together," he says. "It is deeper, older. It will want to touch you." Bruce, leaning on a cane for now, shivers. "It already did," he says. "That blade, my cells are still screaming about it." Varro studies him. "The medici say your body is stable," he says, "but the psychers are wary. You are a node of instability, Dr. Banner. That may be a weapon, or it may be a threat. Terra will decide which." Bruce snorts softly. "Story of my life," he says. Again. The voyage begins. When the ship enters the warp, reality bends. Stars stretch into long, bleeding lines beyond the viewports, then vanish into a roiling, multicolored storm. It is like falling sideways through a sea of fog and fire. The Geller field, a shimmering golden barrier generated by arcane machines and bound prayers, wraps the ship in a bubble of real space. Outside the field, things move. Shapes like screaming faces and twisted beasts press against the invisible wall. Claws of light scrape and slide off. Voices whisper things that never quite become words. Inside, the crew keeps busy. In the Medicae bay, Steve does rehab. He walks short laps around the chamber, IV lines removed, stitches tight. Each step hurts, but the super soldier serum in his blood speeds healing. A Medici with bionic eyes watches him, making notes. "Do not strain," she says. "The wound was unusual. Psychic taint sits in the scar. It may act oddly." "How oddly?" Steve asks. "Dreams," she says. "Flashes. Perhaps a new sensitivity to the warp. We do not know. You are not like our kind." Steve thinks of the dream of the three paths. "I'll manage," he says. In the ship's chapel, Thor, Varro, and Titus meet. The chapel is long and narrow, lined with candles and metal saints. Space is precious, so people stand instead of sit. Above the altar, a crude painting shows the Emperor as a giant in golden armor, sword raised, standing over a demonic dragon. Titus kneels in full armor at the front. He speaks prayers in low Gothic, asking for strength, humility, and aim that does not falter. His voice is low but clear. Varro stands a few steps back, hands folded. Thor stands near the side watching. After a time, Titus rises. He turns to Thor. "You fight like a demigod," he says. "Our legends speak of such figures. Old heroes from before the Imperium. Some say the Emperor made them. Others say they are lies." Thor gives a faint, lopsided smile. "On my world, I am called a god," he says. "But I have bled. I have failed. I am no all-father. Your Emperor holds a wider burden than I have ever known." Varro tilts his head. "You speak of him with respect now," he says. Thor nods once. "He lent his will to my storm on Viridian," he says. "I felt it, a hand on my own. I do not know why, but I know this. He is not dead, not in the way mortals are." Titus looks at Varro. "If the Emperor sees fit to touch such a being," he says, "what does that make them? Tools? Favors? Warnings?" Varro's gaze is distant for a moment. "Perhaps all three," he says. He looks at Thor. "You must understand something before we reach Terra," he says. "The Emperor's throne is not a place of comfort. It is a place of judgment. He has not spoken to his people in 10,000 years, not directly. If he chooses to touch you again, it will not be for your sake. It will be for his plan." Thor's jaw sets. "I have lived by another father's plan," he says quietly. "I know how little room that leaves for choice. Yet choice is what makes a hero, not power." Titus nods slowly. "Our codex says something similar," he says. "We are tools, but we choose how sharp we are." Varro gives a small, tired smile. "The Imperium fears choice as much as it needs it," he says. "That is one of our great sins. Perhaps you will help us remember that." In a smaller chamber near the ship's core, another debate plays out. Tony, Bruce, Natasha, and Spider-Man sit around a metal table bolted to the floor. A pot of thick, bitter recaf, their version of coffee, sits in the middle. Tony has a bundle of data slates with Imperial writing on them. Spider-Man fiddles with a small purity seal, a bit of parchment with a wax stamp that a young crewman gave him for protection. Bruce watches Tony scroll. "So," Bruce says, "how bad is it?" Tony rubs his face. "This empire runs on superstition and half-understood tech," he says. "And somehow, it still holds a galaxy together. Their ships shouldn't fly. Their warp drives are basically controlled breaches into a hell dimension. Their comms use brain magic. Their medicine is crude but stubborn." Spider-Man raises a hand a little. "Counterpoint," he says. "They're still here. We're in their ship, not the other way around. So whatever they're doing, it works. Kind of." Natasha sips recaf. "They're not stupid," she says. "They're trapped. Their whole system has grown around fear. Fear of change. Fear of new ideas. Fear of the warp. They lock down everything because they're scared of what they've seen." Bruce nods. "And we're a walking bundle of new ideas," he says. "New tech, new powers, new paths." Tony taps a slate. "Their codex says, 'Better 1,000 worlds burned than one heresy left unchecked,'" he says. "Our rule is more like, try everything, but don't break the universe. These philosophies do not play nice." Spider-Man looks between them. "So what do we do when we get there?" he asks. "Bow, argue, tell them how to fix their galaxy?" Natasha shakes her head. "We listen first," she says. "We show that we're not here to tell them how to run their house. We're here because a problem threatens both our houses. The Tyranids are not just their enemy, they're ours too. We're a shared resource. If they see us as trying to save people, not topple their gods, we have a chance. Tony snorts softly. And if they want us to burn worlds, he asks. If they tell Steve to pull the trigger on some exterminatus because it saves more. Bruce looks down at his hands. That's Steve's nightmare, he says. He doesn't believe in trading lives. But this universe runs on that math. He's going to get put right on that line. Spider-Man's voice is small but firm. Then we stand with him, he says, whatever he decides. Natasha meets Tony's eyes. And if standing with him means standing against an empire, she asks. Tony looks away. Then we build a better plan, he says, because I am not going to help a death cult burn planets if there's any other option. The ship creaks slowly around them. Outside the Geller field, the warp watches and waits. The attack comes on the third day in the warp. Alarms blare, turning the ship's red lights to flashing white. Vox speakers bark in frantic high Gothic. Somewhere deep in the hull, massive engines roar as power is rerouted. Steve is in the training bay, working. Light drills with his shield to test his body. The wound still aches, but he moves better each day. Thor is near, letting small arcs of lightning dance between his fingertips in controlled bursts. The deck lurches. Steve staggers, then catches himself on a rail. Thor spreads his feet and rides the sway. What was that? Steve asks. A Vox box crackles. Geller field fluctuation, a voice barks. All hands to sanctified stations, psychers to wards. Inquisitorial kill teams to junctions C7 and C9. Warp presence detected. Varro's voice cuts through soon after, more controlled. Avengers, he says over their combeads. To the main corridor outside the chapel. Now, bring your weapons. Steve does not hesitate. He grabs his shield and runs. Thor calls Mjolnir to his hand and follows, cape snapping. They meet the others at the junction. Natasha checks her pistols. Spider-Man clings to the ceiling, ready to move. Bruce breathes hard, fighting the urge to let Hulk out right away. Titus and a squad of power-armored inquisitorial stormtroopers join them, guns raised. Varro stands at the center, a rosary wrapped around one hand, a force sword in the other. What's happening? Steve asks. Varro's face is grim. The Geller field flickered, he says. Something pushed through. It is not a simple demon. It feels shaped, like the warp trying to copy something. Spider-Man's skin crawls. Copy what? He asks. Varro looks at the Avengers. You, he says. The bulkhead ahead of them shimmers. Metal runs like wax. The air ripples, and shapes step through that weren't there before. At first they look like shadows of the team, stretched and thin. Then details harden. A figure in twisted armor that echoes Iron Man's suit, but grown from bone and carapace, repulsor vents replaced by living vents that spit acid. A hulking brute shaped like Hulk, but with too many eyes and a mouth full of needle teeth. A tall warrior with a hammer made of fused skulls, lightning playing over blackened chitin. At their head walks a figure that looks almost human. It wears a pale copy of Steve's uniform, but the star on the chest is replaced by a Tyranid eye. Its shield is a wide plate of chitin, the colors of the Imperium and Earth smeared together. Its face is Steve's, but the eyes are empty pits crawling with small worms. Spider-Man whispers, "No way." The warp echo speaks with a voice that is wrong. Steve's tone, but layered with others, like a chorus inside a hollow shell. You refuse the trade, it says. You cling to one world. So I have made a better captain, one who understands the numbers. Steve's stomach clenches. He knows this thing is a lie, a tool. But its words hit the center of his fear. Behind it, the Hulk echo flexes, its gamma strength warped into something raw and unstable. The Iron Man Echo's chest glows with an organic reactor that pulses in time with the warp's turbulence. The Thor Echo's hammer drips psychic fire. Varro lifts his sword. "This is blasphemy," he says. "The warp wearing familiar faces. Kill it." Steve holds up a hand. "Wait," he says softly. He steps forward, just enough to be between his people and the Echoes. "What does better mean to you?" he asks the false Steve. The mirror tilts its head in a way that is too smooth. "A better captain does not hesitate when millions can be saved by killing thousands," it says. He sees that worlds are numbers in a sum. He understands that mercy for few is cruelty for many. He does not let his heart cloud his math. Steve's fingers tighten on his shield. "And what about the people in those thousands?" he asks. "The kids, the old, the ones who never chose to be part of your war. Are they just digits to you?" "They are fuel," the Echo says simply. "Fuel buys time. Time buys victory. You already live in a war where your allies burn worlds. You refuse to join them because you wish to feel clean. That is vanity, not virtue." Behind Steve, Tony whispers, "It's using my own arguments back at us." Bruce's jaw clenches. "Twisted," he says. "Black and white." Varro's eyes narrow. "The warp does not create from nothing," he says. "It reflects and distorts what is already in you. This is your doubt, Captain. Your fear of becoming like us, given a mask." The mirror raises its chitin shield. "Your Emperor knows this truth," it says. "He has burned worlds. He will burn more. He will use you to do it, if you let him. Come to me instead. I will take your mind and make it part of the only thing that truly wins, the swarm. You will save more that way than with all your noble stands." Steve looks at the thing that wears his face. He sees every hard choice he has ever feared. Then he breathes out. "No," he says. "We're done having this talk in my head. I know the math. I know the stakes. But there's a difference between facing hard choices and turning people into fuel on purpose. I will not help build a world that treats lives like numbers. Not for you. Not for anyone. Not even for an emperor." He lifts his shield. "And I don't let monsters wear my face." The Echo's eyes flare. "So be it," it says. It lunges. The corridor becomes pure chaos. Warp Echo Hulk slams into Bruce, who lets go and becomes the real Hulk with a roar. The clash of their fists sends shockwaves through the ship, cracking deck plates. Iron Man Echo fires beams of sickly green energy. Tony meets them with repulsors, the two streams colliding in a snarling knot of light that eats away at the metal around them. Thor hurls Mjolnir at his dark twin. The Echo hammer meets it in midair. The impact shakes the warp itself outside. Lightning of two kinds arcs across the Geller field, causing it to flicker dangerously. Varro and Titus lead stormtroopers against the lesser warp spawn. Bolter fire and Larsburst tear into chitin and ghost flesh. Some creatures shriek and melt back into unreality. Others push forward, their forms stabilizing as they drink fear. Steve meets his own Echo in the center. Their shields clash, vibranium ringing against psychic chitin. The Echo moves with his skill, his speed, but without his hesitations. It presses hard, forcing him back. "You cannot win by holding back," it says. "You cannot save everyone. Your way leads to more graves." Steve grunts as he blocks a vicious strike aimed at his wounded side. "I know," he says, "but my way means I see every grave. I don't hide behind math or doctrine. If I have to make a bad choice, I look it in the eye. That's what makes it my choice, not yours." He shifts his stance, letting a blow glance off his shield. The echo overextends just a little. Steve steps in. He slams his shield up under the echo's guard and drives it into its chest. The impact would shatter a normal rib cage. The warp echo's body ripples like water around the blow, but the force carries into its core pattern. Cracks of light run across its form. The ship suddenly shudders. A blinding golden flare washes through every corridor, not from outside the Geller field, but from above, as if the whole warp had been lit from a distant point. Crewmen cry out. Psychers in their wards scream with shock and fall silent. The warp outside the ship recoils. Spider-Man clings to the ceiling, eyes wide. "What was that?" he breathes. Varro's voice is hushed and shaken. "The Astronomicon," he says. "The Emperor's beacon. It just flared. Hard. He is pushing back the warp around us." The echoes scream. Their forms destabilize. The Hulk Echo's extra eyes melt into goo. The Iron Man Echo's chest reactor overcharges and bursts. The Thor Echo's hammer shatters into shards of black fire. Steve's mirror self looks at him one last time. In its hollow eyes, for a split second, he sees not worms but a reflection of himself. Tired, angry, afraid of failing. Then the light takes it. It breaks apart into a spray of dark ash that fades before it hits the floor. The other echoes collapse with it, dissolving into smoke. Silence floods the corridor, broken only by labored breathing and the distant thrum of stabilizing engines. Spider-Man drops to the floor, legs shaking. "Is it over?" he asks. Varro listens to the warp through senses long trained. "For now," he says. "The Geller field holds. The warp recoils from the Emperor's glare. He just paid a price to keep this ship safe." Tony slumps against the wall, armor scorched. "So the big guy on the golden chair is paying attention," he says. "That's comforting. And terrifying." Bruce shrinks back down to human size, panting. He looks at the spot where his echo stood. "That thing was me without brakes," he says quietly. "All hunger, no control. The hive mind wants that. The warp wants that. I don't." Steve leans on his shield, catching his breath. He knows what the echo tried to use against him. His fear of becoming a general who trades lives like numbers. His fear of bending under the Imperium's logic. He also knows something else now. The Emperor did not kill the echo alone. Steve's choice hurt it first. The golden flare finished the job. "He heard," Steve says softly. "He's watching." Varro nods slowly. "Which means," he says, "that this audience will not just be a formality. He has already weighed you once. He will weigh you again on Terra." The rest of the voyage passes in tense quiet. Crewmen whisper of the ghost captain that tried to board the ship. Stormtroopers repaint purity seals at every door. Chaplains lead extra services, giving thanks for the Emperor's intervention. The Avengers stay close together. They train in a cargo bay, moving slower, more thoughtful. They talk less about home and more about rules. Steve spends more time in the chapel than he expected. Not because he has converted, but because it is a place where people try, in their own broken way, to be better than the fear around them. Spider-Man sits near him sometimes, mask off, eyes red from lack of sleep. "Do you think he's really a good guy?" Peter asks once, meaning the Emperor. Steve thinks for a long moment. "I think he's complicated," he says. "He built an empire that burns worlds to save others. He sits on a throne that eats 1,000 souls a day just to keep a beacon lit. But he also pushed back the warp to save us. People are rarely just one thing, Peter. Gods too, I guess." Peter nods slowly. "So we go in with open eyes," he says. "Exactly," Steve says. The ship's final emergence from the warp is smoother. Reality snaps back into proper shape with a low boom. The stars outside are different. A massive, bright point in the distance sends out steady psychic light. The Astronomicon focused on the throne world. Then terror fills the view screen. It is a fortress planet wrapped in rings of metal and light. Orbital defense platforms hang like iron thorns. Battle stations, shipyards, and void fortresses cluster in layers around the world. Traffic lines of warships move in strict patterns. The planet's surface is almost completely covered in city. Hive spires climb into the upper atmosphere, bristling with towers and guns. Vast walls divide districts. Most of the oceans are gone, replaced by armored plates and industrial scars. But at the heart of all that metal and stone rises something different: the Imperial Palace. It sprawls across what was once the Himalaya Mountains, turning peaks into foundations for cathedrals and citadels. Towers of gold and marble rise amid defensive bastions. Giant statues of the Emperor and his saints watch over vast plazas. The Sanctus Judex glides toward a docking spire. On the flight deck, the Avengers stand in a line with Varro and Titus. They have been cleaned and re-armored as best as the ship can manage. Steve's uniform is patched, his shield polished, the scar under his ribs bound tight. Thor's armor has been reinforced by tech priests fascinated by Asgardian alloys. Tony's suit gleams with a mix of Stark tech and Imperium fixes. Spider-Man wears a slightly altered version of his suit with a small acolyte discreetly sewn on one shoulder, a sign that he is, for now, tolerated. Natasha's weapons have been checked and tagged by inquisitorial agents who do not like her but respect her. Bruce wears simple robes, hiding the muscle and the monster as much as he can. Remember, Varro says softly, you walk into the heart of human power. The custodies, the Emperor's personal guardians, will watch your every move. The Sisters of Silence, blanks who kill psychic noise, will stand near. Do not draw weapons without reason. Do not raise your powers unless ordered. Speak plain, show respect, but do not lie. He will know. Steve nods. What about you? He asks. Varro smiles a little. I will vouch for you, he says, as far as my authority goes. Beyond that, you are in his hands. The ramp lowers. Heat and light flood in, along with a wave of psychic pressure so strong that even those without talent can feel it. It is like stepping onto a planet that knows it is the center of everything. They walk out. Golden armored warriors line the sides of the docking hall. The Adeptus Custodes stand motionless, each one a giant in Baroque armor, faces hidden behind masks. Their spears and guardian swords glow faintly. Their presence is like walking past statues that could kill a tank before it fired. Between them move tall women in smooth, blank-faced armor, the Sisters of Silence. Their very presence eats sound in a strange way. Spider-Man feels his spider sense go dead near them. He shivers. Creepy, he whispers. Necessary, Varro replies quietly. They are anti-psyker. The Emperor needs silence around him. They pass through gates taller than skyscrapers in their own world. Every step takes them deeper into the palace. Halls lined with banners and war trophies. Courtyards where titans, city-sized war walkers, stand at rest. Balconies where nobles watch, whispering about the strange xenos-looking champions at the Inquisitor's side. At last, they reach a final set of doors. They are simple compared to the rest. Heavy metal marked only with a small golden aquila. Custodes stand at each side. One steps forward. Only the chosen may enter the throne hall, he says. His voice is quiet, but carries. He points. Captain Rogers of the Avengers, Thor Odinson, Tony Stark, Dr. Bruce Banner, Natasha Romanoff, Peter Parker, Inquisitor Varro. You will enter. Titus bows. My duty lies elsewhere, he says. There is no shame in his voice, only acceptance. Varro inclines his head. Wait here, he tells the others. Pray, if you like. The custodes gesture. The doors swing inward. Beyond them, the throne hall waits. They walk into legend. The hall is vast, lit by shafts of cold light from far above. Rows of silent figures, custodes, high priests, and robed functionaries stand at the edges. The air hums with psychic power, the source of the Astronomican's light. At the far end rises the golden throne. It is not a simple seat. It is a mountain of machinery and ancient metal, cables and conduits snaking into the floor and walls. At its heart sits a figure in golden armor, unmoving. Time has turned him to a near corpse, but his presence fills the room more than any living king. The emperor of mankind. He does not speak with a mouth. He speaks with being. The moment they cross the halfway mark of the hall, Steve feels it. A gaze that is not sight but soul contact sweeps over them. It is like standing under a waterfall made of thoughts. It pins each of them in place in turn. Steve feels 10,000 years of war in that gaze. He feels the weight of every world burned to stop something worse. He feels the agony of sitting on this throne, bound to a machine that eats minds to keep a light on. He feels the Emperor's old dream of a rational, shining future, now buried under layers of fear and blood. Thor feels a peer of sorts, not a god of his pantheon, but a being who has taken on the same burden Odin once claimed, to hold back the dark by any means. He feels the Emperor's disdain for gods, and the sharp, reluctant respect for anything that can stand beside him and not fall. Tony feels a mind that has already run every scenario he can imagine and more. A strategist so far beyond him that his ego wilts instinctively. He also hears a faint note of curiosity. This is someone who broke out of his own universe to fight a threat. Useful, dangerous. Bruce feels a cold, clear awareness of the Hulk. Not as a monster, but as a tool that could crack worlds. The Emperor's thought brushes him and then steps carefully away, recognizing a bomb within a bomb. Natasha feels her whole life laid bare in a heartbeat. Every sin, every mission, every red mark on her ledger. There is no anger there, only a tally, a weighing. She feels for the first time what true accountability might be. Spider-Man feels small, but he also feels something else, a thin thread of approval. Not for his power, but for his simple, stubborn desire to help. In a galaxy of monsters and empires, that spark is rare. Varro kneels first. He drops to one knee, head bowed low. Most Holy Emperor, he says aloud, by your will, I bring these warriors from beyond our known stars. They have fought for mankind. They have bled for Viridian. They have bent the warp and been bent by it. I ask that you weigh them. The Emperor's presence presses closer. A voice, not like normal speech, enters all their minds at once. It is calm. It is tired. It is absolute. You crossed a wound between worlds, it says. You brought your own laws into my war. You have saved lives. You have also shaken balances I have held for millennia. Steve swallows. He thinks back clearly, as if answering a question. We came because we saw a threat that could reach our home, he says. We stayed because we saw people here worth saving. We didn't come to break your laws. But we can't follow ones that burn everyone in the name of safety either. That's not what we stand for. Your stand is small, the Emperor's thought replies. Your cosmos is a bubble in a storm, but principle matters, even when it is naive. My Imperium has forgotten that too often. Images flash through their minds, worlds burned, armies marching, heroes falling into madness. Thor lifts his head slightly. You sit alone, he thinks, bound to a throne that eats you. You hold a galaxy's fear in your hands. That is a burden no one should bear, yet you bear it. Why? Because there is no one else, the Emperor answers. Because when I fell, my dream was twisted into this cage, and I chose the cage rather than let the dark devour all. Victory here is not glory. It is survival, bought in blood. Tony's jaw tightens. So where do we fit, he thinks? Are we new tools, new risks? Do you want us to help you burn worlds faster, or to help you find other ways? The Emperor's presence weighs him. You are knives from another kitchen, the thought says. Your edges cut in new patterns. Left unchecked, you would slice through rules that hold fragile order, but you also offer chances I have not had in millennia. His gaze turns back to Steve. You refused the hive mind's bargain, he says. You refused the warp's echo. You chose to keep your hands as clean as you can in a dirty war. That choice cost you. It may cost many more, but it is a choice I once wanted mankind to have. A faint warmth touches Steve's scar. I will not unmake you, the Emperor says. I will not send you home in chains or scatter your atoms into the void, but neither will I let you wander freely. You will serve, under law, under watch. The weight of the throne eases a fraction. The audience ends as quietly as it began. The Emperor does not wave. He does not bless with a hand. He simply lets his presence withdraw, leaving them standing in a hall that suddenly feels very empty. High lords and priests begin to murmur at the edges. Custodes shift slightly. The formal part will come later. Documents, seals, orders. But the core has already been given. They are not enemies. They are not entirely free either. Outside, the Astronomican's light burns on. Power scaling interlude is set in. 2. In a smaller chamber afterward, Varro explains the new mandate in plain terms. The Avengers are now classified as sanctioned extraterritorial assets. Not citizens, not xenos, but a special category bound to the Inquisition and the throne. Their portal technology, now overseen by tech priests of Mars under secret protocols, may only be used with direct authorization from Terra, and each use will draw on the Emperor's beacon, shortening its reach if abused. Hulk is to be deployed only when a threat scale justifies the risk of further warp entanglement with his altered flesh. In lesser battles, Banner must stay restrained. Thor's godhood is officially tolerated, but any overt challenge to the Imperium's faith will trigger censure. His storms are to be aimed outward, not at its structures. Tony's armor and ideas are restricted from mass distribution. He may upgrade specific Imperial units under strict controls, but he may not seed open innovation. Above all, any independent action that risks large-scale warp breaches, like opening new portals between universes, will be deemed heresy and answered with the full force of the Imperium. Up to now, the Avengers have saved Helio from the first waves of Hive Fleet Gorgoroth, survived the Swarm Lord, crossed the warp, and stood before the Golden Throne. The Emperor has measured them and offered a hard bargain. Serve under law or be removed. They are not dead and not free. The galaxy's hunger has not paused to wait for their answer. The vision comes when Steve is finally alone. He sits in a small stone cell in the palace, more like a monk's room than a prison. There is a narrow bed, a tiny desk, a single candle, no window. He means to rest. Instead, the world falls away. He is back in the ash plain from his earlier dream. The dead cities stretch out in every direction, but now they are clearer. On one horizon, he sees hive spires like Helios. On another, skyscrapers like New York's. Above, the sky is still black, but a faint gold light glows at one point far off. In front of him, 3 paths form. They are not roads. They are lines of events, hung in the air like ghost images, leading away from where he stands. A voice speaks, not around him but inside him. You asked what your stand means, the Emperor says. You fear becoming a butcher in the name of math. You also fear letting many die to save few. There is no clean road, only clearer knowledge of the blood price. The first path sharpens. Steve sees himself and the team stepping through a portal back to their own Earth. He feels the rush of familiar air, the shock of seeing blue sky untouched by hive ships. They return to Avengers Tower. The portal closes behind them. Time jumps. He sees their world months later. They fight new threats. They win some, lose some. There are quiet days. There are school visits, hospital checks, normal hero work. Far above, in deep space, something moves out there beyond known sensors. Hive Fleet Gorgoros is wounded but not dead. Other fleets drift in the void. The data in this path shows a slow turn of chitin and void whales, away from Viridian, toward the empty dark between galaxies. It will take centuries to reach his universe, maybe longer, but the small chance is there. A line in a star chart. Probability, not certainty. Closer in, he sees Viridian. Helios' wall breaks. The boarding action fails without the extra edge the Avengers would have given. Hive ships fall on the planet. Exterminatus is ordered late and poorly. The world burns half devoured. Millions die. The swarm eats, learns, moves on. Your return, the Emperor says. You save the lives closest to you. You leave a galaxy to its existing fate. The chance that the Great Devourer finds you later is small, but not zero. You carry the guilt of every world you did not help, but your home knows peace for a time. The second path sharpens. Steve sees the Avengers rejecting the throne's offer. He sees them flee through a stolen portal, not back to their universe, but into the wide Imperium. They become rumors. A star shield painted on hab walls, a hammer's sign scratched on prison doors, a red mask drawn on ammo crates. They show up where Exterminatus is about to fall and smash the ships that would fire. They break open labor camps. They punch tyrant governors in their golden teeth. Worlds cheer, inquisitors rage. He sees civil wars. Some regiments refuse to fire on the shield angels. Others obey orders and turn their guns on fellow guardsmen. Astartes chapters split on doctrine. Chaos cults laugh and whisper in the cracks. He sees a map of the galaxy with fault lines drawn through it. Every line where an Avenger has stood becomes a line where the Imperium's already thin unity frays. The Tyranids and other threats feel the slack in the net. Hives avoid the loudest places and strike quiet sectors, while the Imperium fights itself. More worlds die. Some are saved in shining, heroic moments. Many are lost in the noise. Your free agency, the Emperor says. You keep your code pure. Answer only to your own mission. You save many, and your symbol becomes a banner of rebellion and hope. But your existence pulls at the Imperium's fabric. You open doors for other powers who do not care about mercy at all. The third path sharpens. Steve sees himself kneel. He sees the Avengers accept seals of sanction from the High Lords and the Inquisition. He sees Varro pin a small, twin-headed eagle over the star on his chest. He sees new battles. Not every front, not every war. Chosen points. The Avengers appear on worlds marked for Exterminatus and force time onto the clock. Tony's portal rigs, under Mechanicus' watch, throw open brief doors for evacuations. Thor's storms cover refugee convoys. Hulk shatters hive tendrils long enough for transports to lift. Sometimes Exterminatus still fires. There are planets where the swarm has gone too deep, too wide. Too many spores already in orbit. Steve sees himself standing on a bridge, staring at a dead world on a screen, jaw clenched. He also sees other worlds. Helios survives in this path. The boarding mission, aided by the Avengers under Imperial sanction, reaches the Tyranid core ship. The Norn Queen of Hive Fleet Gorgoros dies screaming in its own birthing pool. The fleet does not vanish, but it fractures, weaker, slower. It cannot threaten as many systems at once. He sees other names: Trantor, Calixis Minor, Blackshaw. Worlds that would have burned instead hold, scarred but alive. He also sees the cost. For each world they save, there are others they never see. Their leash is long, but not infinite. The Inquisition chooses where to send them. Politics plays a part. Bargains are made. Sometimes they are ordered to stand down. He sees one scene in sharp focus. A world called Altram is half devoured. The Inquisition orders a fleet firestorm to stop a Tyranid splinter there. Steve argues for time to evacuate more people. He wins an extra week. He saves millions. Billions still die when the flames fall. He does not stop the fire. He just moves its edge. Your sanctioned service, the Emperor says. You join my war. You keep much of your code, but you accept limits and compromises. You gain a voice in rooms where mercy has been forgotten. You lose what remains of your clean hands. The visions fade. Steve stands again on Ash. At his side now stand the others: Thor, Tony, Natasha, Bruce, Peter. Varro is there too, pale and quiet. Maybe it is not truly him. Maybe it is just Steve's mind filling in a face. But his eyes look like the real man's. The Emperor's presence hangs above them like a low sun. Choose, he says. I will not force you. I have forced too much already. But I will not let you stand in between paths forever. That way lies worse ruin. Silence. The ash crunches under their boots as they shift. Tony is the first to speak. Return is the selfish play, he says. The words hurt to say. I get it. I'd like it. God, I would love to go home, fix the tower, pretend this was a bad dream. But that doesn't make the Tyranids go away. It just means we don't see them eat people. Bruce nods slowly. Free agent sounds good on paper, he says. We keep our independence. We stay who we are. But this place is too brittle. One strong push in the wrong spot and the whole thing collapses. I don't want to be that push. Not again. Natasha's voice is flat. Outlaws in a fear-based empire don't stay symbols of hope, she says. They get copied by worse people. The Chaos Gods will wear our faces next. I saw that thing on the ship, Steve. I'm not handing the warp another excuse. Peter swallows. I want to go home, he admits. I want to see Aunt May and my school and just breathe. But if we walk away, I'll hear those worlds burning every time I try to sleep. I don't know if I can live with that. Thor looks up toward the unseen throne. Where I am from, he says, we speak of worthiness, not just to lift a hammer, but to hold power. You sit upon the heaviest power I have seen, All-Father of mankind. Your realm is cracked. Your people are trapped in fear, but they still fight. These Avengers are my family. We cannot save every world, but we can help shape how your realm fights. I will not turn my back on that. Varro's voice is soft. The Imperium is a cage we built to keep worse monsters out, he says. We left no doors by design. You are the first door I have seen in my life that does not open straight into chaos. If you walk away, it closes. If you fight us, we break what little holds. If you serve with us, under watch, maybe, we remember that mercy is not heresy. All eyes turn to Steve. He's been quiet, watching all three paths. He thinks of Brooklyn streets. He thinks of Helios Wall. He thinks of kids in both places drawing pictures of heroes on their walls. He also thinks of the blade that impaled him and the whisper that asked him to trade himself for a math result. The warp echo that told him his morality was vanity. He knows one thing for sure. If we go home now, he says, we'll be safe for a while. But we'll leave knowing we were needed and we turned away. That's not what the Avengers do. He looks at the path of free agency. If we run wild, he says, we'll save lives and break this place. We'll make ourselves the story, not the people we're trying to help. I've seen movements like that before. They start pure. They end with flags and graves. He looks at the sanctioned path. I don't like taking orders from people who burn planets, he says. I don't trust every High Lord or every Inquisitor. But I saw Titus on the wall. I saw guardsmen hold a line they had no right to hold. I saw priests carry ammo because there was no one else. If we're in the room when they decide who burns and who gets a second chance, we can do something. Maybe not enough, but more than zero. He draws a slow breath. So we take the third path, he says. We stay, we serve, under terms. The gold light presses closer, curious. Terms, the Emperor says. Steve nods. 3, he says. First, no exterminatus as an easy answer when we're on the field. If you send us, you give us time to try and evacuate and fight smart. If we fail, then you do what you must. But we get that try, and your people know they have to support it. A long pause. Agreed, the Emperor says. Where you are deployed, exterminatus will not be fired until your mission fails, or you signal it is the only path. Second, Steve says, we don't become your terror tools. We fight the things that eat worlds. We don't crush uprisings just because someone asked for fair food or a lighter whip. Natasha's eyes flick sideways. That is very him. You will not be used for simple suppression, the Emperor says. His tone is like a law being written. Your mandate is existential threats. Tyranids, chaos breaches, necron tombs, powers that can end worlds in days. There will still be grey lines, but I will not waste you as petty enforcers. Third, Steve says, voice quieter. We keep a door home, not for escape, for anchor. We take turns. We send people back sometimes, so we remember what we're fighting for, so we don't become just another part of the machine. The gold deepens, thoughtful. This strains the warp, the Emperor says. Each bridge risks drawing the great Devourer's eye. Each use drinks from the Astronomican's light. But I see the value. I will allow a narrow gate, rarely, controlled, abused once, and it closes forever. Steve nods. That's fair, he says. The ash plane fades. The cell returns. He is on his knees on the stone floor, sweat cold on his skin. His scar burns, then cools. The air smells of dust and old incense. On his chest, something has changed. His uniform star is no longer alone. A small, golden aquila spreads its wings out from behind it. The two-headed eagle's bodies fuse with the lines of the star, so that it looks like the star is the bird's heart, not covering, joined. He touches it with his fingers. The metal is warm. Outside his door, boots approach. Varro opens it with a key sigil. He takes in Steve's face and the new emblem with one glance. So, the Inquisitor says, which path did you choose? Steve stands, slower than he used to, but steady. We stay, he says, as sanctioned servants, under rules we can live with. Varro looks at the emblem. For you, at least, he says quietly. The aquila has a heart again. They do not get to sit with the choice. The war does not wait. Within hours, orders come down from the High Lords, stamped with the sigil of the Inquisition and countersigned by a silent custodes. Hive Fleet Gorgoros has reached a tipping point over Viridian. The boarding mission, launched while the Avengers were on Terra, has pierced the outer layers of the suspected Norn Queen hive ship. Astartes kill teams are inside, but resistance is fierce. The synaptic core must be destroyed soon, or the fleet will fully adapt to all current counters. The Sanctus Judex is being redeployed as part of a strike group. Avengers presence, ordered. Exterminatus authority, delayed, pending outcome of Project Star Eagle. Tony frowns at the project name. Cute, he says. Who came up with that? Varro glances at him. The Officio Strategos enjoys banners, he says. Steve looks at the orders. No one even discusses staying behind. Back to work, Natasha says. The return trip to Viridian is shorter. The warp seems to bend a little more smoothly around the Sanctus Judex now, as if the Astronomicon is holding the road open on purpose. The Geller field hums steady. No echoes break through this time. In the launch bay, the team gears up. Tony's armor now bears a small Aquila on one shoulder, opposite the arc reactor. Thor's cloak has a thin stitched Emperor's symbol near the clasp. Hulk's containment bay has extra wards painted on its walls, half prayer, half math. Spider-Man stares at his own shoulder patch. So, we're really doing this, he says. Steve nods. We are, he says. Remember the rules we set. We push for evacuations. We hit the big threats. We don't get used to the idea that burning a world is normal. If someone forgets that, we remind them. Varro folds his arms. And if I forget, he asks. Steve meets his eyes. Then you'll hear from us, he says. Respectfully, loudly. For once, Varro laughs, a short, dry sound. I look forward to your lectures, Captain, he says. Now go kill a god beast. The hive ship is a nightmare in orbit. It fills the viewport as their assault craft approaches. Not because it is close, but because it is huge. A bloated, many-spined mass of chitin, flesh, and tumor-like growths, hanging in space like a rotten sun. It oozes spores and tendrils. Bioplasma cannons glow along its flanks. Tyranid escorts swarm around it, but Imperial Navy ships and defense platforms keep them busy at range. The assault craft is a blunt wedge of armor. Inside, Astartes in blue armor stand braced. Titus is among them, helmet on, bolter maglocked to his chest. Behind them, a smaller bay holds the Avengers. Steve checks straps. He feels the ship shudder as it enters the hive ship's biogravity well. Objective is the synaptic core, Tony says over the squad vox. A hollow of a twisted organic chamber glows between them. Deep in the central mass, big psychic signature, probably where the Norn Queen sits. Kill that, and the rest of the fleet trips over its own feet. Varro's voice crackles in their ears from the Sanctus Judex. Remember, he says, you are not alone. Other kill teams are striking anchor nodes and secondary synapse pools. Your job is the heart. If you succeed, Helios stands. If you fail... He does not finish. They all know. The assault craft slams into flesh. Bioshields flare and crack. Living armor shrieks as it tears. Acid sprays. The craft's front melter charges burn a hole through chitin and bone. The ramp blows outward. The smell hits them first. Rot, acid, old blood, and something like wet electricity. The air inside the hive ship is thick and warm, humming with psychic vibration. They charge into a tunnel of meat. Thor leads, Mjolnir crackling. Titus and his Marines form a wedge around Steve, Natasha, and Spider-Man. Hulk, unleashed, stomps behind, hands flexing. Tunnels twist. They fight through waves of defenders, gaunts with toxic spines, warrior beasts fused to the walls as living turrets, floating sacks that spit lava that grow claws mid-flight. Tony flies ahead where the tunnels are wide enough, cutting new holes with repulsors. His readings spike toward the core. The mind pressure's stronger this way, Bruce grunts through Hulk's mouth. Feels like someone shouting in my bones. At one junction, they hit heavy resistance. A cluster of Tyrant Guard holds a choke point, shields locked. Behind them, a massive creature fused into the wall, its brain sac pulsing. Every time a guardsman dies somewhere on the hive, that brain pulses brighter, adjusting patterns. Thor's eyes narrow. He hurls Mjolnir in a tight arc. It curves, smashing through two shields, then into the brain sac. The creature pops in a shower of ichor. The swarm stutters for a moment, losing a bit of coordination. They push through. Deeper and deeper the walls pulse. The shadow in the warp thickens as they near the core. Spider-Man's spider sense screams constantly now, a high, shrill note. Natasha grits her teeth as pain lances behind her eyes. Hulk snarls, feeling the pressure trying to warp his rage again. Stay out of Hulk's head, he bellows, punching a hole through a wall that tries to sprout teeth. At last, they reach a vast chamber. It opens like a cathedral made of flesh. The ceiling arches high, lined with hanging sacks and twisted spines. The floor is slick with organic fluid. In the center rises a mound of pulsing meat and bone larger than a fortress tower. On it, half buried, hangs the Norn Queen. It is a monstrous mass of flesh and tendrils, dozens of ovipositors feeding slime into egg pools. Multiple brains cluster around a central core. Its eyes are blank, focused entirely inward and outward at once, sending commands through the whole fleet. It is surrounded by a thick curtain of synapse creatures and psychic drones. The hive mind's presence here is almost solid. It slams into them as they enter, a roar of hunger and cold calculation. It remembers Hulk's taste. It remembers Steve's refusal. It remembers Thor's lightning and Tony's beams. It has rebuilt a swarm lord in a distant sack already. It does not plan to lose these samples again. The air vibrates. Psychic lashes crack out. Spider-Man drops to his knees, hands on his head, mask muffling a scream. Natasha staggers, vision blurring. Even Titus's enhanced mind reels. Then a different pressure flares. Steve's scar burns like a brand. The small Aquila under his star glows, unseen under his suit. A thin line of golden light runs through the warp pressure, cutting out a narrow lane. It is not a shield. It is a path. Forward, Steve grunts, forcing his legs to move. Now, they charge. Thor calls lightning, but shapes it tight, hammer-guided, along the golden lane. It slams into the Norn Queen's outer shell, burning open shallow craters. Tony pours repulsor beams into the same points, widening them. Hulk leaps high, using fleshy growths as handholds, and smashes down on a cluster of synapse beasts, turning them into paste. Spider-Man, gritting through pain, uses webbing to pull Natasha out of the path of a psychic blast. In return, she nails a biocannon that had been lining up a shot at him. Titus and his Marines form a gun line at the front. Fire, he roars. Bolter shells crash into the Norn Queen's guard beasts, blowing limbs and heads off. Some of the shells are special, blessed, part tech, part ritual. They explode inside Psyker brains with extra force. The hive mind lashes back. Tendrils whip out, trying to grab Hulk and Thor. Spore clouds billow, trying to choke, lungs and clog armor seals. A psychic scream hits Steve like a hammer, throwing him to one knee. He hears again the hissed offer. Trade one world for many. He sees the ash plain paths. This time he hears another voice cut through, steady and tired. You chose, the Emperor says. Stand in it. Steve pushes up. He raises his shield. Avengers, he shouts, voice raw. All in. We finish this. They do. Thor hurls Mjolnir once more. This time, not to strike alone, but to guide a storm he does not fully control. Lightning arcs along the golden lane, riding the Emperor's distant beacon like a rail. Tony feeds his armor's whole power into his chest beam, sinking with the storm. Bruce lets Hulk go deeper, but not all the way. He rides the line, using the pressure to hit harder without letting it twist him. Natasha and Spider-Man clear the flanks, killing anything that gets close enough to disrupt the attack. Titus and his Marines fire a final full volley of special shells into the wounds Thor and Tony have opened. The Norn Queen's core cracks. For a heartbeat, the shadow in the warp screams. Then the core bursts. Psychic shockwaves tear through the hive ship. Eggs rot in an instant. Synapse creatures drop dead, brains burned out. The walls convulse, muscles spasming. Outside in space, Hive Fleet Gorgoros staggers. Ships veer off course. Bioplasma shots go wide. Some lesser vessels simply go limp. Dead husks, drifting, their guiding mind gone. On Viridian below, guardsmen on the walls feel the pressure lift. Psychers who had been bleeding from their eyes sag with relief. The swarm's movements on the ground turn jerky, slower, less coordinated. Local synapse nodes try to compensate, but they are small. Helior realizes the impossible. The swarm is falling apart. Inside the hive ship, the chamber starts to collapse. Fleshy columns give way, fluid floods in streams. The Norn Queen's body slumps, its eyes finally dull. The whole ship shudders like a dying animal. We are leaving, Tony shouts. Agreed, Titus growls. Fall back. They run. Tony cuts a path with repulsors. Thor smashes collapsing bone with his hammer. Hulk acts as a living battering ram when tunnels shrink. Behind them, fires start. Warp energy, broken free from its channels, eats flesh and steel alike. In some places, it manifests as shrieking faces. The Emperor's light holds them back just enough. They reach the breach point as the hive ship's skin starts to crack. The assault craft that brought them in is gone. In its place, hovering in hard vacuum just outside the torn wall, is a different ship. A smaller inquisitorial cutter, held in place by thrusters pushed to their limits. Varro's voice is tight on the Vox. Jump, he says. Now. No one argues. Hulk goes first, leaping into the void and slamming into the cutter's hull. He grabs a handle. The others launch after, pulled in by emergency grav hooks and Spider-Man's webbing. The cutter peels away as the hive ship begins to split. A line of white fire runs down its side as its internal reactors go wild. Then it erupts in a silent, slow bloom of burning chitin and vaporized ichor. The psychic scream of its death rolls across the system. On Viridian, the swarm shudders and breaks. Tyranid creatures without synapse guidance revert to animal panic. Many flee. Others stand still until artillery tears them apart. Some fight each other in blind hunger. Helior lives. The Imperium does not order exterminatus. Not today. Days later, the war on Viridian is not over, but it has changed. Helior's wall is still scarred. The fields beyond are dead and tainted. Millions have died, but millions more walk the streets. In a quiet corner of the city, a young girl stands on a crate and paints. The wall in front of her is part of a hab block. It used to be blank, stained with smoke. Now it holds a mural. She has painted Captain America's shield, as best as she can remember it from the day he walked the wall and told them to stay low. The star is at the center. Around it, she paints a simple, crooked aquila, wings wrapping the shield. Her little brother tugs her sleeve. "What is it?" he asks. She smiles, tired but proud. "It's the Star Eagle," she says. "The soldiers say it's a new sigil. The Shield Man and the Emperor together. It means we don't give up on worlds anymore without trying everything first." He looks up at the symbol. "So we're safe now?" he asks. She hesitates. "We're safer," she says. "There's still bad things. But they said next time the Star Eagle and his friends will come sooner. Maybe." She finishes the last line with careful strokes. On the wall nearby, a guardsman from the Helior 22nd lights a glow stick and watches. He has seen too much to believe in fairy tales, but he has also seen a green giant punch a beast bigger than a tank, and a thunder god light the sky, and a man with a shield stand where even Astartes flinched. He taps ash off the end of his stick. "Looks good, kid," he says. "Thank you, sir," she replies. He salutes the painted symbol without thinking, then walks back to the line. In orbit, on the Sanctus Judex, Varro stands in a small chamber with Steve. The planet glows on a holomap between them. Red marks of Tyranid presence fade, replaced by yellow for quarantine and blue for secured zones. "Project Star Eagle's first test," Varro says. "Result: 1 Hive Fleet fragment crippled, 1 world saved, no exterminators fired. The High Lords are already arguing about what it means." Steve watches the map. "What does it mean to you?" he asks. Varro is quiet for a moment. "It means I was wrong about some things," he says. "Not about the dangers, those are real, but about mercy always being a trap. Sometimes mercy with teeth works." He looks at Steve's chest emblem. "Your conditions are now law," he says. "Faxed and stamped and sealed. Where you go, worlds get 1 more chance. Not 2, never 3, but 1 more than they used to." Steve nods. "It is not enough. It is more than nothing." "What about us going home?" he asks. Varro sighs. "Terra has agreed to let small teams cross back at times," he says. "Under tight watch. To rest. To remember. To fetch allies perhaps someday. But you understand now. Every crossing draws attention. The hive mind learned much from that first breach. We cannot make a habit of it." Steve looks out the viewport. He can almost see, in his mind's eye, the faint outline of his own world somewhere beyond the stars. "We'll use it when we must," he says. "Not when we're tired, when it matters." Varro nods. "That," he says, "is why you were not unmade." Elsewhere in the galaxy, other eyes turn. On a rusted space hulk drifting in the warp, a Chaos Sorcerer peers into a scrying pool and snarls as he sees the star and Aquila symbol appear on 1,000 tiny shrines. "New icons," he hisses. "New hopes, new doubts." The corpse god invites another crack in his shell. In the cold void between galaxies, the great devourer shifts. Hive minds that have never touched each other share the memory of Gorgoros's wound. They file away patterns. Lightning-wrapped hammers, shields that resist psychic blades, green rage that burns back. They adapt. On Terra, in the Golden Hall, the Emperor sits unmoving on his throne. But in the warp, his beacon burns a fraction brighter around 1 small cluster of stars. A cloaked figure in golden armor, the hand of the throne, writes a single sentence into the hidden part of the Imperial Codex. It defines sanctioned extraterritorial assets, Star Eagle detachment, and notes their operating rules. Somewhere else on the palace's lower levels, a young clerk stamps the page, blinking at the strange simplicity of the clause about attempting all other options before planetary purge when assets are present. He shrugs and files it. On Viridian, months later, helmets and hats change. Some guardsmen paint tiny stars inside their Aquilas. Some Astartes of Titus's company add a thin ring around their chapter badge, a symbol only they and a few others understand. Thor stands on a mountain ridge, watching a sunrise over a scarred land, and thinks of Asgard and Midgard, and now this third home of war. Tony argues with a tech priest about clean energy sources that do not involve trapped souls. Bruce works with Medici and Psychers to understand how warp pressure affects human and Hulk. Natasha quietly trains a new style of Inquisition agent, one who can ask, "Is there another way?" without fear. Spider-Man swings between repaired towers, laughing with kids who never heard of queens but know what webbing can do. They are not saints. They make mistakes. They get pulled into ugly choices they cannot fully fix. But the symbol of the Star Eagle spreads, not as a banner of rebellion against the Imperium, as a quiet promise inside it that somewhere in this grim, wide galaxy, there are people in the war rooms who will fight for the extra try, for the one more transport, for the wall that holds one more hour. In time, stories grow. Some say the Star Eagle is a new saint. Others say he is a xenos mutant the Emperor tolerates for now. Children tell simpler tales of a man with a shield, a god with a hammer, a green giant, a red mask, and others who came from a different sky and chose to stay. They say the Star Eagle stands where worlds are weighed on scales of fire, and sometimes the scales tip just enough. Codex note: by special writ of the Golden Throne, the Star Eagle detachment is granted conditional sanction to operate beyond imperial norms, with the explicit mandate to oppose existential threats and to exhaust all reasonable measures of preservation before authorizing planetary purge in any theater where it is deployed.